IEPF अथॉरिटी द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
हाँ जी सुरेश जी, रिटायरमेंट के बाद जो प्रोविडेंट फंड आएगा उसका क्या करेंगे?
कुछ खास प्लान नहीं है, पड़ा रहेगा बैंक में, ब्याज आता रहेगा और क्या।
सुरेश जी, बैंक से कितना ब्याज आएगा? एक नई स्कीम बताता हूँ, उसमें पैसे लगा दो, साल भर में दुगने बल्कि चौगुना हो जाएगा। हाँ, बस कुछ नए मेंबर्स बनाने हैं।
नहीं सुरेश जी, इन सब फालतू चक्करों में मत पड़िए कि नए मेंबर बनाना, रातों रात करोड़पति बनाना, ऐसे सपने दिखाने वाली स्कीम से बचकर रहें। आप लालच में आकर नहीं, समझदारी से निवेश करें। नए मेंबर बनाओ, वर्ल्ड टूर पे जाओ, कमीशन पाओ या उपहार घर ले जाओ। ऐसे सपने दिखाने वाली स्कीम से बचकर रहें। ऐसी स्कीम्स धोखा हो सकती हैं।
IEPF अथॉरिटी, कॉर्पोरेट कार्य मंत्रालय द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
यार वो मेरे बचपन का दोस्त है, वो क्यों मुझसे झूठ कहने लगा? वो कह रहा था इस स्कीम में पैसा लगाने पर 6 महीने में 10 के 20,000 हो जाएंगे।
और तूने मान लिया?
ऐसा ऑफर कौन छोड़ता है? 10,000 के 20,000।
एक काम कर, ये ले 100 रुपये पकड़ना और जाके 10 किलो लड्डू लेके आ।
अबे पागल है क्या? 100 रुपए में 10 किलो लड्डू आते हैं? अबे इसके तो 1 किलो लड्डू भी नहीं आएंगे।
जब इतना जानता है तो ये नहीं जानता कि 6 महीने में 10,000 के 20,000 नहीं होते। समझदारी बढ़ा, लालच नहीं।
लालच में न आए, समझदारी बढ़ाएं। IEPF अथॉरिटी द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
Hello friends, myself Gaurav Agrawal, Chartered Accountant, having experience of 15 years practicing in the area of indirect taxes. I have been advising to corporates in the area of GST, service tax and excise. The GST was introduced in 2017. 5 years has already been over. Now I am here to give you awareness about the GST registration. Before we start the process, laws and the legal provisions, I will give you the idea about the benefits you will be availing after taking the GST registration. GST is a law wherein the indirect tax is recovered from the consumer and paid by the supplier to the government account. Benefits of taking the GST registrations are: you will be legally recognized by the banks, by the financial institutions. You can raise the tax invoice wherein your buyer can take the credit of the taxes charged from him. You are also allowed to take the input tax credit of the purchases on which you have paid the GST. Under the GST, registration is PAN based, and there is one more thing. This registration is state wise. So wherever you are providing the services or you are supplying the goods, you need to take the registration in each and every state. So after understanding the benefits of the GST registration, we have to move on. Who is liable to take the GST registration? As per section 22, every supplier of the goods or services or both is required to obtain the GST registration in the state or union territory from where he makes the taxable supply if his aggregate turnover exceeds the limit. Here are two words are there, important words, from where he makes the taxable supply. Another word is aggregate turnover. So we need to understand the meaning of both the words. Here I have given a table in which aggregate turnover limit is specified. What is this limit? This is basically the threshold limit wherein state-wise conditions amount is referred that the applicant who is applying for the GST registration need to check what is the threshold limit in the state. In case of goods only, the earlier the threshold limit, general threshold limit was 20 lakh only. But later on in GST, government provided a benefit that in case of you are supplying the goods only, the threshold limit benefit can be extended to 40 lakh. However, if you are supplying goods and services both or in combination, in that case the threshold limit in general will be 20 lakh and for the specified states it is 10 lakh. You can see in the table there are states Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh. There is a different threshold limit. However, in case you are supplying only goods, then in few states 40 lakh benefit is available. So before proceeding to take the registration, you need to check what is the threshold limit for taking the GST registration. Now the next step is how this 40 lakh, 20 lakh or 10 lakh threshold limit will be calculated. We have to check the aggregate turnover. It is defined under section 2 subsection 6. The aggregate turnover says aggregate turnover means a value of all the taxable supply, exempt supply, export supplies, or the services or both, and interstate supply, a person having the same PAN number, to be computed on the all India basis, but it excludes central tax, state tax, union territory, integrated tax, cess, and also excludes the value of inward supply under the reverse charge mechanism. Now let us understand this. The aggregate turnover have some inclusion and exclusions. It includes, first of all, it includes the taxable supply and the exempt supply as well. So we should be very clear that the exempt supply, which is out of the GST, shall also perform part of the aggregate turnover. However, there is an exemption provided that if you are dealing exclusively under the exempted supply, in that case you do not need to take the registration. Now go to the table slide 6, wherein exclusions and inclusions are mentioned. For aggregate turnover, total turnover of all the branches under the same PAN will be included. Value of exported goods and services will be included. Value of exempted goods and services will be included. In interstate supplies between the distinct person having the same PAN number. What is this? There may be a situation that you have the selling location in Delhi as well as in Noida, and you are transferring the goods from Delhi to Noida or Noida to Delhi. In that case, the supply between these two branches shall be considered as a supply for the purpose of aggregate turnover. Now next, all the supplies made by the taxable person, whether on his own account or made on behalf of all his principal, means agent principal relationship. If you are selling the goods as an agent principal relationship, the turnover of the supply which is as an agent will also be included under the aggregate turnover. Now what are the exclusions? Exclusions are given that inward supply on which tax is payable under reverse charge. What is this? There are situations wherein you are required to pay the tax under the reverse charge mechanism, like goods transport agency service, like in case you are availing the advocate services, legal services, there is a reverse charge liability. Means tax liability is being shifted instead of supplier to the recipient. Therefore, this is not your output tax liability. Therefore, it will be excluded from the aggregate turnover. Now, the next is value of supply of goods supplied by the principal directly from the premises of the job worker. it will also be excluded. And the most important is element of GST. Your supply may include taxes also. The tax will be excluded for the purpose of calculating the aggregate turnover. So after finalizing the aggregate turnover, now we can decide whether what our turnover supply is exceeding the threshold limit or not. If it exceeds the threshold limit as per the state, you have to take the GST registration. After deciding this, now we will move on to place where we need to take the registration. There may be a question, should I take the registration in Delhi or in Noida or in Haryana, Gurgaon? So this will be decided as per the section 22. Section 22 says you have to take the registration from the place where you supplies the goods or services. So from where you supplies the goods or services. So जहाँ से आप सप्लाई कर रहे हैं, जहाँ से आप सेल कर रहे हैं, उस प्लेस पर रजिस्ट्रेशन होना ज़रूरी है. Especially in case of goods, if you are supplying from Delhi, you have to take the registration in Delhi. If you are supplying from Haryana, Gurgaon, then you have to take the registration in Haryana. यहाँ पर एक बात और ध्यान रखनी पड़ेगी कि अगर हमारा गोडाउन हरियाणा में भी है, हमारा गोडाउन दिल्ली में भी है और हमारा गोडाउन नोएडा में भी है, तो we have to take registration in each of the state. So each state-wise registration will be required. However, in case of services, there is a difference. You can supply the service from one location. Like I am a chartered accountant, I have the office in Delhi. I can supply the services all over India while sitting in Delhi. I can bill from there. So I do not need to take the registration in each state. So the place of supply will be the location of the customer, but the place from where I am supplying the services will be the Delhi. Next is, after deciding this place of business, I will decide to take the registration in the state and the threshold according to the threshold limit. Let's move on. Is there any compulsory mandatory registration under the GST? Even if my threshold limit is less than the state-wise limit, I should have to take the registration? Yes. There are certain categories under section 24 wherein the mandatory registration is required, like person making any interstate supply, casual taxable persons, person who are required to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism, non-resident taxable person. Non-resident taxable persons are the like actors, film stars, or the musicians coming from outside India into India. They do the stage shows, they charge the fees, they are providing the service. In that case, there is no threshold limit. They have to take the registration in India at the place where the event is being held. The another category is person who is required to deduct the TDS tax under section 51 of the GST Act. Every e-commerce operator who is required to collect the tax at source. Input service distributor. Input service distributors are the persons who are distributing the tax, input tax to the branches. They are also required to take mandatory registration. There is no threshold limit. Person who makes the taxable supply of goods or services or both on behalf of other person, whether as an agent or otherwise, are also required to mandatorily take the registration. Person who are required to pay the tax under reverse charge mechanism. Every person supplying the online information and database access retrieval service. Now, after reading this compulsory registration, we have to understand two important points. One is casual taxable person registration. Who is the casual taxable person? The person जो लोग एग्जीबिशन पर्पज से, इवेंट पर्पज से रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की रिक्वायरमेंट जिनको मैंडेटरी है, लाइक आई एम फ्रॉम J&K, आई एम कमिंग फॉर द ट्रेड फेयर, आई हैव बुक्ड अ स्टॉल देयर और एंड आई स्टार्ट selling from there. In GST there is a law, you have to take the registration. The registration will be under casual registration category, and there is only threshold limit is available only to the one person, that